Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Her Village podcast. I'm Caitlin McGrayus, founder of Be Her Village, and our podcast is features of amazing service providers that have joined Be Her Village and an exploration of the type of work that they do and the services they provide and how they help new moms. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by Jess Duffy, who is a hypnobirthing instructor and a prenatal yoga instructor and a mom of 2, 3, I don't know.
Who can keep track?
And a stepmom in Metro Detroit. So welcome, Jess. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Caitlin. I'm so happy to be talking with you again.
I am always happy to be talking to you, Jess. There's just,
I love it.
We've never met in person, but there is like some serious energy on Zoom that flows so beautifully.
For sure.
And it feels so good. So tell me a little bit about the work that you do first off, and then we can just get into wherever it goes. But I'd love to hear about the types of services you provide and the women that you work with and what you're doing over there in Detroit. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first became a certified prenatal yoga instructor because I took the classes myself, and the format that was instructed to me was just so influential, so purposeful, just really gave me so much strength, education, empowerment when it came to birthing, and just really introduced some new ideas to me. I mean, you posted today, I made a note of it. There is no force equal to that of a determined woman. And I feel like that really embodied kind of my message too, right? It's so true. I didn't realize how capable we are, what an empowering experience childbirth can be, because I think that it's so often portrayed as something that's painful and to be feared almost, right? That it's happening to you instead of something that you are the center of. This is your birthing experience, right?
Absolutely.
So for me, it was mind-blowing. Giving birth to my 2 babes were just the coolest, most badass days of my life. And I love it.
So you took hypnobirthing. When you became a mother, you were not already a prenatal yoga instructor or a hypnobirthing instructor. I don't know what you were or who you were before that, but you were not a birth worker or doula, because some people are.
I was not
already wrapped up in it. Okay.
Right. Yes. So my husband and he has a son from his first marriage, and so Liam is 12. And so when we decided to grow our family more, we had both worked in the advertising post-production world. And so I decided to stay home with our growing family. And so in that, I had practiced Kundalini yoga prior to, and consider myself a spiritual person and introspective, all these things. And I knew I wanted to integrate some movement. I'm not a runner or, anybody who's out there doing CrossFit. I love it. Kudos to all of you who are.
Good for you, but not your thing.
No. I rode my bike this morning for 20 minutes and I'm killing it. So.
Exercise for the month. All right.
Yes, right. Lord. So I found prenatal yoga nearby me, and it was so perfect. And just the instruction, the invitation to tune into your body, which is so instrumental when giving birth. Everything that we were doing had a purpose, and was tied to giving birth. And so when I had my first son with us together, Jackson, he turns 5 tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So exciting.
Yes. I loved it so much. And I knew that the format of prenatal yoga that I was taught was instrumental in how amazing my experience went. And so I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, share it with all the mamas. I am so passionate about this. I love it.
So the prenatal yoga is what was transformative.
That was the
hypnobirthing
catalyst.
came later. I love that because I think the messaging, like I can imagine a Be Her Village listener who's pregnant and like all the messaging is exactly what you said. It is, this is going to hurt. This is going to be painful. This is something you have to endure. This is something that's going to ruin your body. Life will never be the same. Everything is bad. You'll never sleep again. I mean, there are women who are so fearful of normal birth that they opt for elective C-sections just to avoid this like horrible trauma of giving birth that is presented to us. And I want to say first off that I fully support somebody who makes a choice in their birth. You want an elective C-section? Good for you. I will help you find somebody that will do that for you and take care of you. Like there's no judgment in that. When I see someone making a choice like that out of fear, though, I wonder about how we're failing these women as a culture. Not that those women are making choices for themselves, and that's a beautiful thing. But there is this culture certainly that talks about birth as a painful thing and as a scary thing and as something, again, like you said, that happens to us. Like it's going to be something that's completely out of our control. And this tuning into ourselves and it's so much more than just a physical experience, birth, right? It's like, it's a spiritual experience that happens to coincide with our physical, but this separation of mental health, of emotional health, of physical health, all into these like different categories when it's all so enmeshed and so intertwined.
It is.
And birth really taps into all of those modalities and all of those parts of us in a very, I mean, not trying to downplay, birth is intense, man. It's so intense.
Sure, yes.
But there's
powerful.
So much capacity to grow and to experience yourself. It's almost like I've never actually done psychedelics or anything, but like I imagine it's like that sort of thing that you're tapping into. It's like something that's the potential for transformation in a spiritual and emotional sense, as well as a physical sense, is so there. Oh my goodness. Yes. Birth is amazing. So let's just talk about birth. But I love like hearing you say, God, birth was so great and I gave birth and it was amazing, because we don't hear that. We don't hear that enough. And I know me as a doula, I say to people, I try not to say it too much, but like, I'm a miserable pregnant person. I am the worst pregnant person. It's really bad. But I would give birth like every day. I would wake up and give birth. Because it's like, and I also am miserable like the first 18 to 24 months of the baby's life.
just a window really on either side. Just
that one like 6 to 24 hour period. I know where I shine.
That's where it's at.
Surrogacy,
but I get that.
Minus the pregnancy would probably be good for me. Like, here's a baby, go take care of it. I kid, I love my children, but
of course.
But that birth experience, and I would say that to doula clients, and they're like, "What? You like giving birth?" I talk about my third birth. It was so my first was a C-section induction. It was kind of a nightmare, but my second one was 21 hours of labor. And I went into this, like, I say, like, I went to the stars. Like, I went into this dark, but, like, lovely and mysterious dark place.
Calming.
Far, far away from the hospital room that I was in. And it was like, it was just so incredible. It stays with me. It feels like it was yesterday. And my third birth, I was so looking forward to that. And I had this, like, train wreck. It wasn't a wreck, but it was like this speeding train, 6 hours start to finish birth. And I remember being like, come on, like I wanted more labor. Like I waited 9 months and I only got 6 hours and I felt so shorted. And it was such a ridiculous thing, but I feel like you could understand what I'm talking about.
I can. You are the first to say I wanted more labor.
I know.
I get it.
I wanted to be in that space. That space was so cool. Like this in my body, like in this deep part of my body in a way that, you know, we go through norm. We wake up, we make breakfast, we have coffee, we talk to people, we work. Like those are important things and impactful things, but my God, it's so far away from the norm. You know, it was like, Yeah, it was really cool. So I love that about prenatal yoga. I've never heard someone talk about the impact of prenatal yoga. So can I clarify, was it Kundalini prenatal yoga or was it just prenatal yoga? What was it like?
It's Kundalini inspired. So my yogi, my mentor, my instructor for prenatal yoga was Elise Bowerman, with Sweet Mama Yoga. And she afterward created a certification program specific to prenatal, postpartum, a gentle flow, mom and baby yoga. So I instruct mom and baby too, because I love being able to create a space for new mamas to gather, right? I think that sense of community and connection is so important. And just to be able to practice getting out of the house, to be able to go somewhere and not worry carrying this burden almost that people kind of project on us, that if your baby cries or screams, that they are like interrupting the space, right? And like, how dare them? So
how dare you exist, baby?
Right? Yeah, and vocalize your needs. So the only way you know how.
Right.
So having a space where it's like, it's all good. Anything goes. It's a pretty hilarious class, but it's so fantastic. And when we went virtual, I said, Mamas, will you please keep your microphones on? Because it'll feel really strange for me to do this class. Jess. And not hear all your babes, just really just vocalizing their needs, exploring their voice.
I love that you welcomed that. I could see, I mean, I used to run postpartum workshops with my doula team, and the women would be like, I'm so glad I had a reason to get dressed today. And I looked forward to they would come in rain, they would come in snow. I mean, it was such an outlet and a safe place and a place to not feel alone. Even if you have lots of friends, it can feel really isolating after you have a baby. So I love these spaces that you're creating. I love that you invited the mothers to keep the microphones on, because you're really touching on something that I don't think I've ever verbalized before, but this sense that we have to like apologize for our children, and that our children's existing and having needs and having noises is somehow offensive to other people. And it's not even that it has to be, it's like this perception from the mother that my job is to keep them quiet. And if they're not doing that, it reflects right on us. And
right.
I know a lot of women who have this is like the PC term for it, high needs babies who very typically, as I've seen in my life, turn into high needs toddlers and high needs children, and often turn into CEOs later on down the line. But they are really, really intense. And it doesn't mean anything is wrong. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. But for these mothers in this culture of if my child is behaving, even if it's an infant, if my child is quiet, if my child is behaving, then it reflects well on me. When I don't know, part of becoming a mother, at least from my experience, and I'm sure from yours, is like, there's a sense of when we're gonna have a baby, they're just gonna be like a smaller version of me and what I would like them to be. And then you get a baby and you're like, oh, you're like a whole person that I get to like have the pleasure of shaping a little bit, but you are completely separate from me in terms of your personality and your will, and they are just like little spiritual creatures that I get the pleasure of interacting with and being their mother, but there's no controlling who they are and how they behave and what they struggle with and where they succeed. And it's a lesson I learned over and over again. My oldest, I don't know that he was high needs, but he's like, probably has ADHD, maybe a little Asperger's. Like he's a little different. And I've learned in the past few years to celebrate that with him. Like but I know that feeling that you just talked about, like mother's like, it's with newborns. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry they're crying.
Right.
Yeah.
How often do you see maybe on Pinterest or wherever, people making entire like little baggies to take on the plane for everyone else on the plane? A, how costly is that?
Right.
And B, let's flip the script. Everybody help celebrate and help nurture, support, give permission for what is and how babies are, right? And lift new mamas up and be her village, right?
Yes, and be the village and be her village. And how about somebody buys her a drink and says, hey, good job getting out of the house and going on a plane with your kid.
Yeah, right?
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
Yes, there is this burden on mothers. I remember this was a woman who I was her doula for her birth, and she was just so incredible. I think they're all incredible, but and she called me and she said we had like a 10 o'clock workshop, one of these postpartum workshops where all the mamas bring their babies and we all talk about our feelings. It's great. And she called and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't come today. The baby has been screaming nonstop. I just can't come today. And I said, you have to come today because you need to come. Bring the baby, bring the crying baby. Where else should you be than in a room with us, with your doulas, with other women? Please bring the cry. Like, you could hear that she needed the support more than anybody. And she did. She ended up coming. It wasn't like I was demanding she come, but she was like 10 minutes away and just scared to come with the baby that was crying. And those are the days that we need the community more than ever. So it sounds like, just like circling back to what you're offering, it's not just yoga. I think is so much more, and you could speak to it way better than I could, but yoga is so much more than exercise. It is spiritual, it is emotional, and it's community. It's about coming together in a group and to form these communities that it sounds like have transferred over into the virtual realm, which is something we should discuss as well, what this all looks like in a pandemic and the losses that are happening. I think there's probably some wins and some gains, but there is a real loss of connection in a time that women need connection more than ever.
Absolutely. It is. It's such a special phase of life. And it is about, educating and helping connect and, inviting in the idea that birth can be a fantastic and empowering, beautiful experience. So, I don't instruct any other yoga classes. Like, that's it for me. That's my core, my passion, my purpose, right?
You're just doing the prenatal yoga. It's like you're just doing that. But that's your sole focus is the prenatal and the mom and baby yoga afterwards. Right. So it's all about the maternal experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we shifted. I wanted to touch on something you had said there. So with the, totally lost my train of thought there.
I know we were talking about the losses for the women, and I wanted to talk about that. I'm sure what you're thinking of will
good though.
Circle back around. I know that you and I had talked about, you had said, business it's different after the pandemic, and it's hard to get the women. And as a businesswoman, I'm like, oh man, it's too bad business is bad. But as a mother, I remember saying to you, if people aren't signing up for your classes, that means people aren't getting what they need. It's not like they're going to some other class. It's that women are not getting the services and the support that they need. And I feel like this pandemic has, for me anyway, I would love to hear how it happened in Detroit. And I'm not sure, because you're not a doula, so I'm not sure how much you know about what happened. But in New York, obviously we were hit really, really, really hard with the pandemic. We spiked almost immediately. Yes. And one of the very first things the hospitals did here was get doulas out immediately. Before they even closed schools, doulas were out of the hospital. Shortly after that was already, to me, horrific, because we had proven and proven our worth and proven our ability to work as part of the team. And we had just made such inroads with midwives and doctors, and the lines of communication were open. And then it was like the door just shut. And then they did an absolutely inhumane thing, and they made women birth alone in New York.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I feel like women are, in a lot of ways, and birthing women especially, but also mothers and working mothers, they're bearing the brunt of this pandemic in ways that other people are not being asked to bear the brunt of. Like staying home for 3 months while collecting unemployment, hopefully, or not hopefully, we're either working or collecting is one thing, but doing that and trying to work and managing children and trying to or missing out on your prenatal appointments, or not being able to go to
Right.
your yoga classes, not being able to have this connection at a time where the baseline of support, I think, before the pandemic was women weren't getting enough of it anyway. And then the pandemic
Right.
just like cut out any remaining chance
Yes.
of support. And so I want you to fill up your classes as a business person, but I also really want the women to have access to you, because what you offer them and what they get from each other when they're connected by you is so incredibly valuable. I mean, I would have killed for a class like yours had I known about it, you know?
And
It's
I'm
so
so
hard to
grateful that it
find
was
mom friends.
available to me. And yeah, and I don't know, because I think that I had, multiple classes prior to quarantine and the pandemic. And, so all of these wonderful women around the Metro Detroit area. And then maybe one or two when we transitioned to virtual, we're still kind of searching and finding it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the numbers, right? Just as women are having babies, or maybe the virtual space wasn't resonating with them in the same way.
Well, virtual, I mean, I feel like part of the pandemic, for me anyway, that people are not doing enough of is just acknowledging that virtual is not the same. Because like, it's not
Right.
the same. It's just not the same. And I think there's this, maybe by necessity because it's all we have, or maybe because you don't want to dwell on what's not working and you want to be negative, but like everyone's like, oh, virtual, virtual schooling, virtual this. And it's like, whoa, like, yes, better to have it than to not.
Yes.
But it's so much better to be in the room.
It is. I keep equating it to like licking a lollipop with the wrapper still on.
Oh,
Right? Like, not quite there.
so close. I feel like we could go other places with that too. But let's stick with the lollipop. Oh,
I'm sick of it. Oh no.
Oh man. But
Too
yeah,
funny.
it's like not quite satisfying in the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love it. Okay, so switching gears, how did you find hypnobirthing?
Yes, I did have a childhood wonderful, beautiful friend of mine provide me with a link as I was getting ready to birth, my 5-year-old, and she had taken hypnobirthing classes, and she was like, "Check this out. I don't know, if you've got the resources available to do it right now, but at least, just give this a listen." And I was like, "Oh, absolutely." And so it was a hypnobirthing, script, probably a YouTube video or something. And it provided me with a beautiful tool to really, I describe it as almost like a separation of mind and body, like just really believing, knowing, trusting that my baby and my body know what to do. And if I can focus on my breath, right, and just really go into, as that starry
The starry
place,
space.
just
Yeah.
finding whatever that is for you. So there's a lot of visualization. There's a lot of, just being able to kind of separate, knowing that, your uterus is contracting and it's going to do that regardless. So, right, it does it without us needing to try. So if we can just kind of stay out of the way and allow our body to do this work without resistance, without tension, and that comes from having a calm mind, focusing on your breath. And so it really was that was my first introduction to it. And so I had found through instructing prenatal, a lot of women were coming in that were taking hypnobirthing classes and noting the similarities between maybe some of the movements, especially the breath and the affirmations. And so I thought, well, gosh, wouldn't this be it just felt like a natural additional offering to be able to provide to the women around me. And
It was
again,
a
now that
natural
we're,
extension of what you were doing already.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So if you don't mind me clarifying, because I am familiar, I trained as a hypnodoula. I did hypnobabies for my own births and had incredible outcomes from it. I love hypnobabies, so I understand it, but I want to help clarify for people who are listening that are like, what is hypnobirthing? What does that mean? Like,
Right.
because when I, as a layman, if I'm hearing you say that, I'm thinking, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm thinking like, I'm birthing and you're going to like put a clock or one of those like pocket watches and you're going to go back and forth and I'm going to get like into a zone. I'm not going to really be fully conscious. Like, is that what's happening when you're hypnobirthing? What is it? Hypnosis? What is hypnosis? How does it work?
Yes.
Do you mind?
No, I'm grateful that you ask it. I think it's necessary to kind of dispel myths and to touch on what it is and what it isn't. So all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. If you're familiar with the movie Office Space, he gets hypnotized and then he stays in it. Yes. Yes, the hypnotist dies and then he's stuck in this. You cannot get stuck in it, just like you don't get stuck in dreams, right? You are always in control. It's going into this trance-like state. And so if you can imagine a familiar route that you drive, and if you've
like driving coma, like when my husband starts driving to work and I'm like, honey, I do the same thing. If I don't think about it, I end up at the place I always go. You just get on a parkway. Right. We have a lot of parkways, right? You just get on a parkway and you're like, oh, wait. Yeah, that's hypnosis. Yeah. That's like a hypnotic sort of a state.
Okay. Yes.
Like autopilot. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Where, your mind is clear and the body is calm. I know that I've done that too. And I'll get to my place or I'll get home from wherever I was coming from. I'm like, did I stop at that red light? But the truth is that if there was a red light, if a pedestrian had been walking by, you would snap right out of it. And so that's the case here. And I know for say like my high school graduation, party night, I was fortunate enough to be able to have that. Shout out to the 2020 seniors.
I know. Anybody who's existing anywhere in 2020,
right?
Any celebration, it's awful.
Yeah. It is. So there was a hypnotist, right? And he had so-and-so running around like a chicken. But they wouldn't have been doing that if they didn't want to. Nobody can make you do anything that you don't want to do. They're simply suggestions. The ultimate goal is you're being, with the help of the scripts, the MP3s, the education you're receiving. It's all about calming your mind so that you can start working with the subconscious, right? We've got these spinning wheels, these swinging monkeys of the conscious mind, always so active, right? And if we can just allow that to settle and then kind of explore beneath it where we hold these deep-seated beliefs, and in this scenario, surrounding birth and any fear there, many women have been told, negative stories about.
There's something about a belly bump that people are like, let me tell you the worst story I know about pregnancy and birth.
Yeah.
Like an onslaught walking around in public. It's terrible.
Right? It is. Yes. And then, movies, it's always screaming and water breaks in a giant gush.
Your water breaks and 3 minutes later, baby's crowning and you're screaming at the top of your lungs. My husband can't even
on
watch
your back in the bed.
My husband can't watch birth scenes with me anymore because I just tear them apart because it's so not accurate. And it scares the crap out of the people I work with. Every woman I work with or their husband, like they have this sense of what birth is, and it's all based on Hollywood because birth is behind closed hospital doors now, and we don't see it. It's not a community-based event for the vast majority of people. Yeah.
Right. The vast majority. I was like, who wants to come in? A baby is being born, you guys.
Guys, a baby is coming out of me. Does
Come
anyone
on.
want to see this? Love it.
So, but most people.
Yeah.
People, yes.
So my experience with Hypnobabies. So Hypnobabies is a little bit different from hypnobirthing. They're both childbirth preparation, childbirth education and childbirth preparation based in hypnosis. There are differences. I'm not totally clear on what they are, but my experience with Hypnobabies is they were very, they talked a lot about language, about instead of a contraction, it's a pressure wave. Instead of labor, it's birthing time. Like it just kind of what you're saying about like calming the mind. Part of that is like this emphasis on positive language. We hear contraction, we hear transition, we hear labor, we hear birth, and it all sounds awful and scary because there's so much attached to it.
Right.
And so one of the things that I remember for my VBAC, I was laboring at home by myself. My husband was actually right over there in that bed, and I was kind of where I am now. There was a recliner here, and I was laboring so like really intensely. I had no idea how far along I was. And I was having a monster contraction, which is called, in Hypnobabies, it's a pressure wave. I was having a monster contraction that was tearing me apart. It hurt a lot. And most of them I was able to like get on top of with my breathing. There's like, it's a strange thing to say, but you can kind of like if you just stay with it, you can stay on top of them. This
like
one,
a wave.
yes, like a wave. This one got ahead of me. And so I was like deep in it, and it was getting away from me. And I remember tuning into my Hypnobabies tools, and I was using the hypnosis tools. And I remember in my head, I said to myself, it's just pressure. It's not pain. It's pressure.
Yeah.
It's not pain. It's pressure. And it was the most wild moment of my life because I'm in the middle of this monster contraction that is very, very, very painful. And because I was in that hypnotic state, when I said it's pressure, not pain, the whole contraction turned into pressure and all the pain left. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't in disbelief in that moment because I was, still in the middle of the contraction, but it was like, just my ability in my brain to say, this is not pain you're feeling, this is just pressure. The whole sensation shifted to pressure. And I was like, whoa, this is nuts.
Yes.
And I don't hate, that's a strong word, but I don't love when there's this like, I don't know the right word, like this hyperbole when it comes to things. Like when people say like, oh, if you have hypnosis or hypnotic birth, like you can have a pain-free labor, orgasmic labor, all this. And yet, like my experience with my VBAC, I say to my husband, I'm like, I don't know. Like it was really, 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 really intense, but I don't remember it being painful. Like so much
intense
pressure.
Doesn't have to be a bad thing. So
intense, but I don't remember pain. It's, and I don't remember pain like 5 minutes afterward. Like meanwhile, he's on the outside looking at me like, so we have like different versions of how this labor went. My version of it, which is the only one that's right, is that I was a birthing goddess, and I was in the stars, and I was totally in tune with my body, and I was feeling pressure, not pain, and it was really hard work, but I did it, and I was like a peaceful birthing goddess. And he's like, you were yelling at all the nurses, you wouldn't let anyone touch you, you were saying no. And I'm just like, well, yes, that's right, but that's because they were messing up my awesome labor, and they were annoying me. So like we're both, and
you've got to be your strongest advocate. Yes.
I was, my God. But I love that like his version is like, you were just yelling at everybody, like, but that's because they were messing up like all the good stuff that was happening inside of me. But the power of the hypnosis, which sounds to me very woo, very like,
right.
Like, okay, hypnosis, okay. Like, it's one of those things to me that, I don't know, my mom has a term for me that is crunchy, not crazy. Like, I'm crunchy granola where I can be, but I'm like pretty pragmatic about a lot of things. So I know, like, the not crazy part of me is like, hypnobirthing, like, that part of me, and I know there's listeners out there like, hypnobirthing, like, you've got to be kidding me. Except that there is a lot of science behind it. And my experiment of N=1 is that it worked in that contraction. Like I felt it switch, and it just blew me away. The power of our minds is incredible. It's just
so incredible. It's the most advanced tool there is. We can do anything, and really it's so true. I can do anything for 1 minute, the length of a sensation, a wave, a contraction, right? Yeah, and that language is so important. Words matter.
They matter.
Words are important.
They are very important.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I'm just like in my head, I go to Black Lives Matter because
same, I did too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like when you said words matter, it's like, well, and this is totally switching gears, but it's all relevant because parenting is activism and it's political, and birth work is political, and like words matter in birth because contraction and transition and pain being phrased differently, it matters. Like Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter. Like that's one word, and the implications behind it are so big. It really matters how we speak about things. It really matters how we phrase things and the words that we choose and how we're selective in and specific. We need to be specific in our language. And I think on the political front, it's the word or the phrase Black Lives Matter. It's incredible to see the evolution of where that has come from even like a month ago, or it's like the change. I don't know, time has no meaning right now. I don't know when when everything happened, but I think it was around Memorial Day, which was like 3 years ago. So I don't know. It's all right.
It's challenging to keep track right now.
We're all going to wake up from quarantine being like, oh, that was a weird hypnosis.
Right. What was that here?
What was that? Oh, but yeah, it's a great example of like the words that we use. It impacts us in a way that is important and is meaningful in birth, for sure.
Absolutely. And even, for the LGBTQ plus community, right? Referring to partners, asking people what their pronouns are, these are important shifts to make. And again, just another example of, words matter. People matter. They deserve to be addressed and treated, as well and as fairly and as much as resonates with them, just as anybody else.
I love that you brought that up, because I think a part of it too is like there's this power associated with it too. Like it's easy as a white cis woman to say words don't matter, like there's men and women, and if you're not that, then I don't care, like it's easy to be dismissive of that. But for someone who identifies as something else, or who wants to be called something else, or just doesn't fit into this the structure that has been put forth by the powerful, it matters to them. And the same for Black Lives Matter, and the same in the hospital setting. Like it matters that a nurse comes in and asks what your pain level is. Oh my goodness, this is something I tell every one of my doula clients, is put on your birth plan to not be asked about your pain level, because it is something that you don't know is going to happen to you. And by the time the question is asked, the impact has happened. It's been set like, oh, I'm in pain. Like how, well, I didn't know I was in pain. I was really in an intense spot, but and the nurses have it on their chart. It's part of their job. They have to ask in the hospital setting what your pain level is, because that's part of their protocol. So it's one of those simple things that gives the power back to the women and gives the power back to the birthing people to have them be the center of their birth, rather than the system that they're stepping into when they choose hospital birth, or when they don't have an option to give birth anywhere outside of hospital. Because I don't want to assume that every person that's giving birth in a hospital is choosing to be there, because I think that's a little that's not acknowledging enough the shortcomings of the American healthcare system, and the fact that, this is part of why Be Her Village exists, right? Because how many women have I spoken to that would love a home birth but don't have $6,000 cash, that would love a doula but don't have $2,000, that would love lactation support because no one in their family has breastfed for generations, but they don't have the cash. They have a $700 stroller and they have crib bumpers and they have, I'm like, we need to get money in the hands of the women and the birthing people and let them get the support that they need. And that's really where Be Her Village comes in, is to try to address some of these inequities in our system, in the power system, in the healthcare system, and to do it in a really efficient way. Because if I had all the time and all the millions of dollars, I would do it through the government. But I don't have any of that. So I made a website, and we're trying to change things, you know, through the private sector. But we got to get money in the hands of the birthing people to flip the power system, you know, because I just think money talks. I think money is it's not the only way, but it's one of the more powerful ways. It's like, here's $5,000, you know, here's your family crowdfunding for you. Go spend it on support.
Yes.
How much of an impact will that have?
Absolutely.
I hope a whole lot. That's the whole idea.
I do too. I think it's incredible what you've done here. I'm so grateful. I have always advocated for women to ask for services, you know, as opposed to just all of the material items that you might feel like you need. And, you know, and to be thinking forward. And we talk about this, you know, in hypnobirthing too, which is why it's important to note that it's so much more, right? It's a lot of childbirth education. It's learning your options. It's all about, you know, right, you can have a hospital birth, you can be at an independent, you know, birthing center. Maybe it's a home birth for you. You know, there are midwives or an OB. There's, you know, have a doula. There's so many different things to explore. And then considering, right, that the fourth trimester afterward, how can I prepare for that? What kind of, you know, how can I get meal services in place, or postpartum doula, lactation consultants, house cleaning service,
mental health support. I need that prenatal and postpartum, and like also 5 years postpartum. I still need that.
Absolutely. My appointment was yesterday at 4 p.m.
I love it. We need to talk about that. Therapy is good. It doesn't always feel good, but it's good. It hurts,
right?
So
but
good.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that. And the synchronicity in my life, I just really love and appreciate. I was on a call with my hypnobirthing. I got my certification through the Calm Birth School with Liz Stanford, and they're based out of the UK. What an amazing community, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And so we had been doing a Zoom call yesterday, and she talked about learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that that's huge, and that ties into what you're saying right here, right? If you want that personal growth, then getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, but you're growing in that moment, you know, you're exploring.
I hate growing. I would way rather be comfortable, because I'm in like a moment in my life right now where I am like having an expansive amount of personal growth.
Okay.
I'd really rather not.
I feel you. It can be, right? Because
like,
it's like so familiar where we were or where we are. Yeah. And you're like, it's fine. I'm fine.
It's fine. But no, I kid, but like it doesn't always feel good. It usually doesn't feel good to grow, because it involves, like, I always look at it like The Grinch. I don't know if you watch The Grinch, but The Grinch is one of my favorite movies ever, because it like sums up my entire feeling about Christmas and holidays, is that it's not about the stuff, and it's nothing. I mean, nothing's about the stuff. Look at Be Her Village. It's not about the stuff. We don't need stuff. We need people and support and energy and love and togetherness. God, I guess The Grinch is like my life story, not just my Christmas story.
Right? Did you
having this growth? Look at this.
This connection you love made. It's all coming together.
It is. And so what I love in The Grinch, and what I think of when I think about personal growth, is like, I mean, this interesting part of the story is the Grinch. He goes through this transition. He's so angry and so isolated. My kids, I mean, the Grinch, we should do a whole podcast just on the Grinch and the Giving Tree. That's a whole other one too. Boundaries. So the Grinch is this angry guy. My kids are always like, why is he angry? And I'm like, or why does he live in the mountains? And I'm like, I would love to hear his backstory. Cause like, pretty sure he wasn't born like that. You know, that's a whole other thing. Something happened in his backstory. So anyway, so he's had this huge transformation. He tried to take away all their stuff. He tried to make them as miserable as he is. And then he realized it's not about the stuff. It's about being together. And then he joined them. But before he joins them, his heart grows 3 sizes and it breaks through like all these like chains that he had around it.
Yeah.
And I was, that moment for me is always like, oh, the heart. Like I've had so many moments in my life where I feel my heart breaking open 3 sizes and it hurts. Like it doesn't feel good, but it's so good to be in that new place. But it takes a little bit of pain to get there. It takes a little bit of humility and, you know, introspection and changing patterns that I didn't even realize I was having. And, you know, it's not
right.
easy, but it's so good afterwards. And so I don't know where we were when we were.
Well, which brings us right back to Black Lives Matters again,
Yes.
right? As white women, to be taking a look at our own, you know, white privilege and, you know, where ignorance lies, and really looking in the mirror, and that can feel uncomfortable, but it's important to, you know, start with ourselves here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think I've seen my own transformation, like on the Black Lives Matter and on racism, and I'm nowhere near where I should be and can be and hopefully will be, but I'm trying. And one of the places where I see a difference is I used to just not talk about it because I was scared to offend, because I don't know enough. And because I'm a white woman with privilege, who am I to talk about it? But what's become obvious to me, and I feel awful that it took this long for it to be obvious, but it, you know, we're here now, is, and a lot of my life and growth is like just forgiving myself for not being, you know, you just have to meet yourself where you are, the way we meet other women. And now I'm talking about it, and I'm making mistakes, and I'm doing it imperfectly, but I'm talking about it mostly with other white people. And it's a really interesting exercise to hear their transformation. And it's also really interesting to see people that I talk to and respect and love, and to see them like where I was a few years ago, you know, and to know their thought process. And a lot of them are well-intentioned, but are misinformed, or just they haven't seen the light yet, you know. And it's this like this very gentle and delicate process of doing it in a way where you're meeting them where they are, because you don't want to tolerate racism, you don't want to like encourage white supremacy, but you also have to meet people where they are. You can't just be like blah, blah, blah. And then as a white person, I think it's our job to bring them in, like, come and see the light with us. You know, like we're part of this issue, even though it wasn't us, our individual selves. It's generations of systematic policies. I grew up in Levittown. Levittown, New York was one of the first suburbs in the nation, and it was made after World War II. And they sold houses for $8,000 to World War II vets that weren't Black. You could not buy a house in Levittown as a Black veteran who just fought for our country. And it's that sort of thing. So I grew up in all white Levittown, except for the one Black kid who was my best friend, which I didn't know. It's like, I didn't have any awareness at the time of like why there was one Black kid only, you know, and why that was, still to this day, I kind of knew it as a fact in the back of my head, but it's not something that is affecting my life. And I think that's where it is as white people, we have to take ownership of like, why do I have the things that I have? Well, because it's been systematically set up for me to have the things that I have, and that those resources are not available on purpose. You know, there's this myth of like meritocracy, like you can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, really though, can you? Because lots of people that are white like have their family buying them houses or paying down payments or paying for college, and they have that from like the wealth that is built into the system. And lots of families didn't have access to those funds or those loans or anything. And so there's this generational gap that happens. And so a lot of it is like, for me, is helping educate other white people about, no, it's not your fault individually. You didn't cause this. but we are part of the system, and we are continuing to perpetuate it because we continue to benefit off of the things that were in place decades and decades ago. Not that many decades ago, like 4 decades ago.
Right.
It's not that far away.
Not that far away, and still ongoing. And right. So I think it's so important to not be silent, even if it's not going to be perfect, and and to lead people to Black voices, right? And being anti-racist, right? We can't just be.
It's an active, it's a verb.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Yeah. It's not, I don't know. I don't
it's not, but it's the easier job, right? Like we're coming into it with this privilege.
Experiencing racism.
Right. Yeah. Oh no.
Oh no, man, it is really hard being white, Jess.
Right. I hear you.
So like I tried once, and I remember like texting another doula who like is into social justice, and I was like, I just tried to talk about racism. This was like a year or two ago. I just tried to, my son, again, ADHD, maybe a little smidge of autism, like totally functional, great kid, but like very, very literal, which kids are already. And then he's like extra. So I remember like just feeling really like I need to talk to him about skin color, because it's not a thing that Black kids and he's actually Hispanic too, but it's not a thing that people of color have the luxury of not talking about. So as a white parent with a white passing kid, I feel like I should be talking about this stuff. I was trying again. It was an attempt. So at the end of the conversation, he was like, I'm really glad I'm white. Wait, that's not
right.
That's not what any of this
is.
Sit
back down.
First of all, you're not white.
There you go.
Second of all, I'm not saying this stuff so you feel better about being white, but like obviously I said something that was impactful enough for him to be like, man, it's better to be white. And like, yeah, it is. And you, in terms of privilege, but also the next step is we need to break that down, and we need to make it that you don't have that sentiment at the end of our, I don't know. So I'm just stumbling like left and right, but there are attempts, so I texted her and I asked for some resources. I brought him to a Black Lives Matter rally that was in my town. And I was, by the way, so proud of my town, because my town is like, it's white, it's I'm not in Levittown anymore. I'm two towns over, and and it was the youth that did it. They like, God, the youth is so amazing. And they put this rally together. It was like 1,000 people on a Sunday afternoon they marched like down our thoroughfare into the park where I take my kid. Like, it was just so freaking cool to see the young people in the town, and to see other mothers there. I ran into a bunch of other mothers that had their kids there. It was really all white mothers that were there trying to do the work. So we're absolutely messing it up. There's like not a doubt in my mind, but to me, I'm just going to keep trying so that I don't end up with like 30-year-old white passing kids that are like, don't have any understanding of racism. Like
the awareness.
Like planting a few seeds here and there about the greater issues that are happening. It's hard. It's one of the many things with mothering that are not, there's no like right or instruction book.
Right. Yeah.
What do you do with your kids?
What do you mean?
Like with talking about race and racism and Black Lives Matter, and like, what does that look like? Your kids are younger than mine, I think.
They are, yeah. I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm struggling with how to approach, or when. I'm sure that there's a conversation to be had with the 3 and 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. But what does that look like? And that's something that is, right on the lengthy list of what I need to research and educate myself on better. And, because it's like, it's like you said, it's systematic, it's already in place. And I don't want to continue to follow, right, the the patterns that allow those systems to stay in place. And so hopefully, right, subsequent generations won't be, and there'll be shifts and change, and equal rights. And at the same time, it does need to be addressed, but is racism taught, right? So I understand that I don't want to pretend that people aren't different colors, but yeah, it is. I'm yet to determine what to say to him. Have you talked to your 4-year-old about it yet?
No, I don't think so. Like, they know that I took their older brother to the rally and the protest, and I invited them, but I think only my oldest wanted to go, which I was fine with. I don't know, my 4-year-old, I'm just happy to get a word in edgewise about anything.
Ain't that the truth?
She's the only force greater than a determined woman is the 4-year-old.
Yes.
I don't think she has any capacity to, like, I mean, so Black Lives Matter, but also like coronavirus. There's just, these kids are entering childhood, like their conscious childhood, with like huge things that feel huge. And I'm an adult, or I act like an adult, like huge, like a pandemic. I don't know. I'm struggling with that. Like the pandemic, racism, but like, I don't know. It's hard to know how to do it with, and again, like with the privilege, I have always, with any news story, with terrorism, with Trump, with anything, I've tried to isolate them and insulate them a little bit, because I have this pull of like, I was a political science major. I've always been interested in political issues. I've always wanted to change the world. Be Her Village happens to be, I think, my tool to make the most impact right now. But I've always been a really conscious person, a very strong desire to change the world. And I've just basically tried a bunch of different ways to do that. And at the very same time, I really want to give these kids an insulated, like calm, peaceful, bubolic childhood. And I want to do that while also raising conscious children who care, pay attention, understand, so I don't have any answers. This is the balance I try to strike of like, hey, go run around the neighborhood, ride bikes with your friends, have some ice cream and go to bed. Like, that's what I want their childhood to be, but I also want them to be engaged, active, considerate, caring, race-conscious children of the world that go out and make huge impacts too, in their own way, whatever that looks like. So I don't have an answer. This is just one of the many areas where I'm totally floundering as a mother and as a person.
I know.
But
and I'm thinking, right, like here's this privilege as white mothers to white or white passing children, right? And if we were people of color, or, Black parents do need to sit down with their child and say, someone might treat you differently because of the color of your skin.
And somebody might kill you, and it might be the police. I mean, they have to have those conversations early on. And that is not an anti-cop sentiment. I'm not like, for myself anyway, I don't think Black Lives Matter means anti-police. I know it means that for some people. But I also think that those conversations have to happen at a really young age for Black children, for Black parents. And they don't have the privilege of keeping their kids in a little bubble. And that's something I grapple with. I don't know what the right answer is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that. I think that that's really important, and both of us can explore it. Just meaning that I would love
we need more conversations about
it. Figure it out, right? Yeah. To like do better.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is like where the inspiration for things come from, but maybe we need like a mother circle, with, maybe it needs to be all white women. Like, what are we doing? Hey, like, let's call in the white women. Maybe we need to, I don't know, like, but I think talking about anything and acknowledging it is always the first thing, because like, I always think of this, like, here we are, 2 white women trying to acknowledge our privilege, trying to raise conscious children, trying to do the best we can. And yet there's like literally people on Facebook that are like, racism is over, I'm like, whoa, no. Like, so I don't know. I don't know what any of that
Right.
means, but I just like, we, at least we're acknowledging and talking and acting when we can, but it's hard to know. I don't know. And I
Yeah.
don't know what to do with the pandemic either. Like, I just had a whole conversation with my mother. What do I send them back to school? I don't know. Is there a conversation happening in Detroit? I'm so curious, like, because New York was the epicenter, and we have Cuomo, who's our governor, who has been like, we call him Daddy Cuomo because he's like the only politician. He's like this male figure, like everybody just, and he's kind of hot when he's like in power and reassuring you during the pandemic, not in any other situation. Like, when
Attractive attributes.
yes. Oh my God. So I'm just wondering, like, so there's no guidance in New York about what schools will look like. There's nothing about what it'll look like. We're going to find out in August what it will look like. What's going on in Detroit? Are they talking about schools reopening?
I mean, it's a topic of conversation. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I know that, I really, I see and read a lot where my heart's with the teachers, like, right? What does that look like for you? What does that mean for your safety? Here's and these young children, as much as challenging as that would be, to all be homeschooling, but it's like, because parents, are we rushing because parents need to get back to work? Well, what if we flip that? What if, can we kind of look at the businesses and what can you do again,
Right.
To support families so that everybody can stay healthy?
Just as a point of clarification, it's not for I'm going to make a generalization, but I'm doing it. It's not parents, it's women that are going to bear the brunt of schools being closed. I know one family, but I know most families where there are children and working parents, the childcare falls on the women. The flexibility in their job falls on the women. The discussion about, do they homeschool, do they go back to school part-time, falls on, well, the woman will put her thing aside and I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that play. Again, there's like huge systemic things that,
right.
Like the husband or the male partner is or the non-childbearing partner is typically the breadwinner, and it's enduring, and it's one of those ways that the pandemic has kind of like revealed the real cracks in our society, the real, like,
yes.
Like you see Europe and you see all these other countries, they're like, oh, there's a pandemic, just stay home. Here's food. Here's no mortgages. Here's all your money. Just take thousands. Everyone just stay home. And America, it's like, here's $1,200 and get back to work and get back to school. And there's no public health care. There's no paid maternity leave. There's no paid paternity leave. There's no nothing. I mean, it's just the lack of social support systems in our country was always bad, but is really being revealed right now.
Yeah.
And this is where parenting is political, like you can't,
right.
How do you become a mother and see, I don't know, like, I look at my daughter. My daughter is the motivating factor here, because as a mother, I'm a more of a do as I say, not as I do doula. I'm like, you should stay in bed. You should, and then you should take care of yourself, prioritize yourself, self-care. I don't do any of that, and I should, and it's one of the things I'm trying to work on. But it's not easy to do. But like, I look at my daughter and I'm like, I can't raise her in this world that will treat her the way the world's treating me right now, where
right.
My husband, after my C-section, was back at work. There was no time off. He got 4 days off after my second, and he got 5 days off after my third.
I mean,
so
unacceptable.
3 kids under the age of 4, and he was back at work. The next Monday, I was on my own. Like, and I did it, but
right.
I have no idea how I did it.
Yeah.
And I want to, obviously I want to change that with Be Her Village, and I want to connect women, but it's like our country is failing women, and it's really, the pandemic is shining a light on that. I don't know. Like,
and even more so, right, is these women, I'm just feeling for, I've with the mamas, from my classes or that I know personally, friends, and just meeting other women who, especially in this time, like you said, these were already issues of, partners going back to work so soon after. And then, whatever people there are around that are going to be there to help new moms, and usually about 3 weeks after people fall off, right?
mm-hmm.
But now with people needing to be quarantined and more isolated and not, getting out, maybe to come to the new mama's home and help. I mean, these women are struggling more than ever. So I just feel for the mamas that aren't getting that support in all the ways that they need it.
Absolutely. I am too. And I'm hoping that as time moves on, that right, we were talking about growing pains, which led to Black Lives Matter. And I'm hoping that there's a similar response. And I think there's an activation of like, wait a second,
Good word.
This is how it is. This is unacceptable. We have to mobilize. We need to get women's support. We need to make sure that these things are in place so that no matter whether there's a pandemic or another disaster or just regular old life, that when you choose to become a mother, or you become a mother, if not by choice, then that you have some support.
Yeah.
It's like embarrassing how basic that is, Jess, isn't it?
I know.
So basic.
Yeah.
Can somebody take care of the mother?
Right? Yeah, it is. It's so important. Like, a shower should not count as self-care. Like these basic,
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Where did I just see that today?
Yeah, I saw that too. It's such a great point. Like, wait, a shower is self-care. And I remember when I was a new mother, showering with the baby and the bouncer and just doing it as fast as I could because I was alone. What else was I going to do?
Or and hopping out mid-shower because
to breastfeed.
Something's going down.
Oh boy, motherhood is a doozy. Thank goodness there's people like you connecting. Thank you. So tell me what's coming next for you. You're on Be Her Village, right? And
yes.
And you're adding all the Metro Detroit amazing birth support businesses. So we're going to be like Long Island and Detroit based. I love it.
Right.
And as soon as we can fly again, I will come and hang out with you in Detroit.
I cannot wait.
But what is it looking for you moving forward in the pandemic in terms of the birth work and the working with the mamas?
Yeah, I think that women knowing what their options are, right, and feeling empowered to make choices and knowing, right, that they have a voice and their opinion matters is so important. And so I think that's where, I've got my focus on just spreading the word about hypnobirthing, inviting in movement and prenatal yoga, and then, just really kind of taking time for self-reflection. I've made up I'm working on my vision board. I have it right here. This is phase 1. I was just writing out all these things.
Can I just can I just show you? This is embarrassing. I don't have a vision board. I have literally I just grab random pieces of paper and I just write my brain thoughts on there, and nothing's linear. When I was a little girl, I thought life would be way more linear than it actually is. I'm finding that it's not linear at all.
I cannot even tell you how many times I reference, and I should really look up the name of this movie. There was this movie and it's about aliens, but it's about language and communication. And so anyway, these creatures, they communicate with these ink blots. And so this woman, she's, the professor and language expert. And so they have her come and try and decipher, what are they trying to say? Yeah. Anyhow, it's that our minds aren't linear,
Yeah.
but the way we speak can only be linear,
Yeah.
right? And what I want to do is communicate like these aliens where they put out this inkblot, and it's all the thoughts, it's everything they wanted to say at once. And I was like,
I
that's what
love
I
it.
want.
And that is what this is. It's like,
Yes, right.
here's everything.
Yes, I love it.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you so
Oh.
much for joining me today, Jess. It is a light and a pleasure to speak to, and I'm so happy that you're involved with Be Her Village and that your services are on there and that you're totally on board with the mission. And my life is better for having known you, and my life is better for having spent this hour with you. So thank you. You're amazing.
Same, right back at you. I'm so grateful to know you and for your existence and everything that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before I sign off, or we sign off, can you plug your website and all the great ways to contact you, your Instagram?
Yes. Thank you. My Instagram, I'm at Inspired Yoga Plus, all one word. InspiredYogaPlus.com is my website. Jess Duffy dash Inspired Yoga Plus for Facebook, if anybody's there.
Are people still on Facebook? I feel when I'm on Facebook, I feel like 75 years old because I love Facebook, but I know because it's like it came out when I was in college.
I know,
but I definitely feel like an elderly person.
Like my MySpace is
my AOL instant messenger.
Right. Yes.
Wait, let me put up my away message.
My landline phone number is.
Do you remember? Like, I don't know how old you are, but do you remember like when the internet came out and you like only like the phone line, the only house phone line, because we only had like wall phones.
Right.
Was taken up by the internet.
Yes.
Oh.
The signing in sound. Oh, all the things.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I feel 100, but you give me youth with your cool haircut and your amazing earring and your tattoos. If you're listening to this on our podcast app, then tune into YouTube or check out, I'll put something on Instagram so you can see how gorgeous Jess is.
Oh my goodness, you're gorgeous.
And she's cool.
Hey, did everyone hear that? In my
announcement. I'm cool.
I'm cool.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jess. And thank you guys for listening to the Be Her Village podcast. Get you next time.